Hello, 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 and welcome to the Working with Files and Lists in Microsoft Teams. You're going to learn a lot today about how to work across documents and tracking information, and you're going to get a whole bunch of insights and hopefully tips and tricks that you'll use going forward. My name is Mark Cashman. I'm on the Microsoft 365 marketing team. I have my roots in SharePoint, but you'll see a lot of what we do with SharePoint these days is as a content service to Microsoft Teams. And the two things that I want to identify is when you're working with your documents, what does that look like in Microsoft Teams? And when you're tracking information just yourself or as a team member across a very large team, what does that look like to track information? So with that, I think we should get into learning more about what it is to work with files and lists in Microsoft Teams. So I say, let's go. You got this, but I want to introduce a video that is all about we got this.
Everyone's here. Let's see. Yes. All right, good. I have some big news for us.
Should we sit down for this?
Are we updating everybody's laptops?
Is this about the team morale event? Because I've got some pretty big ideas. I've been working on some things.
Okay. Listen up, everyone. 100 stores open up next month, and we all know what that means.
A massive inventory spike.
And getting distribution back up to speed?
Plus a whole bunch of new hires.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I know exactly how we're going to do this. All right, here's our first order. 500 stuffed unicorns.
I only have 100. Oh, wait, more are coming Tuesday. I'll update the list.
How did the interviews go?
Awesome! Hiring these top picks.
The warehouse is having fulfillment issues.
I'll get a mirror on it. Congrats, everyone. We did it. We got all 100 stores stocked in record time.
Whew. Nice work on fulfillment, you guys.
Hey, you made it organized.
And the new hires are totally up to speed.
Nice. It all worked out. I mean, seriously, you guys are great.
You know what's great? Technology. All right, and teamwork.
So you might be getting a sense of what it is to work as a team across a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different content types, and just working with individuals to get work done. We focus on giving you a set of tools that work as a first-party experience within Microsoft Teams, but it really is to map to all the projects that you're working on, all the products that you're working on, and the different life cycles of who you're working with. And we see that as a collaborative notion to work as a team. So collaborative work management in Microsoft 365 takes on a lot of components that you work on all the time, whether it's just one project or hundreds of projects. You oftentimes will work with tasks, assigning a task to an individual or tasks assigned across the team. Those can be assigned from you to other people and vice versa, but really you get a summary of all your tasks that have been assigned to you with the awareness when somebody mentions you, assigns you as a task, it's something that you can track to completion. When it comes to communicating, we have a lot of different forms of communication, but when you think of Microsoft Teams as this hub for teamwork, it really drives the notion to, as you're working with content, of course, you're going to have conversation. So it should be easy to chat. It should be easy to have meetings to coordinate, whether that's with video, audio, screen sharing, and then you can quickly schedule and get work done alongside all of the content, which leads to a different content type. When I start talking about Microsoft Lists, it's a component that helps you track information to easily share it. It's simple to use. It's very powerful in the amount of information that you can track. And of course, across different projects, there may be very different types of lists that you create. You can create rules. You can use general formatting to make that easier and more visual, but it certainly leads to everybody being in the know and staying in sync. And finally, there's a big side of working together on documents. These are files and folders that you create, that you share, and that you work on together, whether it's co-authoring in real time or sharing to somebody to ask their opinion. It's easy to track, it's easy from a notifications perspective, and it's all within Microsoft Teams, powered by a backend that is a consistent content service, that's SharePoint. So I want to pick apart a little bit in terms of what is Microsoft Teams, we will talk about it today primarily from a chat and collaboration perspective for files and lists. But on the whole, it really is a hub for teamwork where your team can share information, work together, get things done, and be in the know from being able to go back to a conversation and see what somebody said, to be able to review a meeting that was recorded and being able to see what somebody mentioned, especially if they mentioned you. That's an important trigger to be able to then take action, whether that action is completing a document, updating a list item, or of course, just being in contact with that individual. There's a big side in terms of using Microsoft Teams for one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many type meetings, and have that being a communication tool with a lot of ways that people can interact and get involved. And you can build into the Microsoft Teams environment applications, whether you're leveraging the Power Platform or even third-party connectors to other tools that you're using. There's a lot of things that you can do to complement on how your team works together. And again, today we're really focusing on files and lists. So let's start to understand what is Microsoft Lists, and then of course I will show you. Microsoft Lists are designed these days to be simple, smart, and flexible, and to give you a head start when you want to get started easily with a template, when you want to build rules to help you manage and track information as things change, either ownership, date, or status, and the flexibility to have them be applications that you use, or just simple sets of data that look and feel and match to what it is that you're tracking. Could be tracking a set of frequently asked questions and what are the answers. It could be tracking physical assets, maybe a set of trucks and truck drivers and how they get assigned to different trucks, devices that they use that are on the dash, and the repair status might be something that gets tracked, all the way through to just issues. When you're on site and you're tracking issues, to be able to report that back, to get insight and information from other people, and to be able to then collaborate and move things forward. All trackable, manageable, and easy to share. That is essentially Microsoft Lists. What does it look like when you bring a Microsoft list or create a Microsoft list in Teams? It is just that. It's tracking information, columns and rows, and then being able to hold a conversation side by side and have that be an integrated experience. So it's easy to update, it's easy to access, and of course it's easy to share and have that conversation. You can mention somebody, draw them into a specific list item, and then get on with your day. It is an integrated lists app in Microsoft Teams, and I will show you that. So to first orient what you're looking at, we're in Microsoft Teams, and I'm in the freelance Teams space, and I'm on the general channel. Pretty much this is where I'm going to stay and show you a number of things on how we're integrating the Microsoft Lists experience in Teams. The first thing I want to show you is if you wanted to create a new list, you go as you add any tab in Microsoft Teams in a channel, and you'll see this new Lists app. When you click it, it's going to assume you want to create a new tab, but this time it's not just bringing content from somewhere else, it's actually creating new content. So when I save this down, it's going to start me as a new Lists tab, and I want to create a new list. I can also bring in an existing list, and I'll show you that next. But if I go to create a list, it's going to give me a lot of different options. I can create from blank, I can bring in a table of data from Excel, or I can bring in the smarts of another list, which is really the column structure, the color formatting, some of the rules, but not the content itself. But what I'm going to do here is go in and show you what it's like to start off with a template. So we have 8 ready-made templates. This is the content scheduler template, and you get kind of a peek ahead of what the structure will be. Different columns, the different color formatting, the way that your list will look based on that you're choosing this template. I'm going to go in and use the content scheduler, and we'll just, for this, we'll say manage content. Pretty simple. And then I could give it a descriptor. My favorite color is green, and I really like this concept of maybe going to the moon someday, so we'll choose the rocket. When I go to create this, this is creating and storing the list in the same location as the rest of the team space, but it's now generating a new content type, which is lists. And it's going to ask me to basically start to fill out information. And I'll be very quick here because I want to really cut over and show you a more of a finished list so you can get a sense of what it looks like. But there are a lot of smarts behind what's here. So I'm going to put in a simple tweet, and I'll add a description, cool tweet. And then I'm going to start to make some selections around the status. This is going to be an assigned piece of content, that the date is going to be a little bit into the future. We're going to make it a point in time that this would go live at 8 a.m. And you get a sense that I can fill in a lot of information, and I'll choose this. This is going to be a social media post, like we said. We can add an image, get a URL once we have it, once the tweet goes live, and you can get a sense that you can track a lot of information. Again, I'll save it down pretty quickly so you can see what it's looked like to create a new list item. But I'm going to cut over to a different list that's leveraging a different template for issue tracking. This is my remote response list that I designed in the same way. I chose a template and I started to layer in data. And it can, of course, be contributing by other people. But you get this notion of if I have building access during maintenance, and I can see here that I've got, information's filled out. I can go in and change it if this was not just by design, but it's a duplicate, if the priority is moved from high to maybe normal. And what changes when I go back to the list after it saves down is some of this color coding, which you have the full access to be in charge of. And you can see here, based on these different choices, they'll have a different color. And even beyond the color, they can have different rules based on if it's like this, where it's days old. If it's older than 30 days, start to show some of these different visuals. So now, if you get a sense of what it's like to create a list, start working within the list, you can actually start to then view things a little bit differently. I can group by status, so I can see all the things that have been completed, all the things that are in progress. And if I want to actually start to hold a conversation and reach out to somebody that I'm working with, in this case, Patty, I can @mention Patty, and I can ask her a question about this all hands Q3 event. Is this still on for the same date? And then Patty will get a notification, and I'll show you what that looks like. If I go to the posts, you'll see here that Megan, who I'm logged in as, chatted out and mentioned, to Patty here, is this still on for the same date? Here's the link back so that if I'm now Patty, I click on the link and I get the list item that I'm referencing, I get the conversation that's already happening, and if I need to make a change based on the question, I can reply back, make a change, and update the list as I need to. So once you get the sense of the conversation right alongside the list item or the content, in this case, the list item, I want to show you an existing list that has one other thing that is of value. This is a storefront approvals list, and I'm going to show you a couple of things. I want to expand this into a broader view because I have a number of columns that stretch out to the right. And this time when I click on to view an individual item, it'll look a little bit different. And that's because we've actually customized the form with a Power App. And you can do that very easily on any out-of-the-box form with lists. You just choose to customize it, and it'll take you to then further customize it with Power Apps. To orient you a little bit, it's pulling in some of the data from the list that you see back here. This photo is being represented here, but it's prominently presented here on the form. But in addition to the list information, we're actually bringing in a Power BI dashboard where you see vendor statistics. So this is live data coming from Power BI programmed into the Power App, and now is a part of the default form for this list, the storefront approvals. We're also pulling in information from Excel. So this is a worksheet within Excel that we're pulling through and able to add as a component of this Power App. Again, just now a part of the default experience for an end user. So we have a lot of great interaction and integration with the Power Platform when you think about customizing forms. Also, we have the ability to customize workflows. So with that, I hope you get a sense of what it's like to work with lists inside of Microsoft Teams. Let's start to now talk about what it's like to work with files in Microsoft Teams. So the other half of the equation for today's presentation is working with files, collaborating with files with others. And I want to give a general understanding first of where are these files stored, but then get into the real value of what is it like to work with files inside of Microsoft Teams. On this slide, you see that there are a number of products called out: OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. And it really is the blend of all three that are giving you this great experience. A lot of what I'll show you is working with files in Teams, but is really a pervasive experience that you get all the same capabilities of working with files throughout Microsoft 365. A lot of the value of how you work and share on files comes from the OneDrive innovation that now is baked into Teams and SharePoint, and vice versa. There's the scale, security, and compliance that you get from SharePoint that's a trusted entity, a source. All of it is a part of Microsoft 365, so all of it is secure, compliant, and private. But the real value is when you start working with others. And a lot of times that will be with inside Microsoft Teams. You create a team, you create a channel, and you start working on files and having conversations. And then, of course, the value is real-time co-authoring, ease of sharing, taking that content with you if you ever go offline, and the value of being able to do that all with inside Teams with your team members without having to feel like you're duplicating, replicating, or switching context. That's the value of working with files in Microsoft Teams. Getting down to some of the nuts and bolts, and you can get a little skip ahead visually before I show you the demo, is within Teams you can manage all of your files across your various teams. You can create subfolders, however it is that you want to organize your content. You can create new content inside of Microsoft Teams. We have a consistent sharing experience no matter whether you're sharing through an email, whether you're sharing directly in SharePoint, or what I'll show you when you start to share in Teams, it's from a chat perspective. It's easy to share and it has that same way of sharing. You can share as a link, or you can make a file a tab. I'll show you that in demo. And you'll have these same capabilities whether you think in terms of engaging through Microsoft Teams on the web, on the mobile client, or even on the desktop. So without further ado, I think you should see what it's like to work with files in Microsoft Teams. So again, to orient you, I'm in that same general channel of the freelance team, but this time I want to show you not just how you can work with lists inside of Teams, but the files side of it. By default, whenever you create a new team, you always, for the general channel or any channel that you create, you'll get this tab, which is the Files tab. And this is now leveraging a lot of the value that we've had for years in SharePoint, but bringing the experience directly inside of Teams so you can better manage your files. One way to see how this actually meets and is also akin to the value of lists is there is a list component to every document library. So as you go to the Files tab, you'll see some of the same value I showed you for lists plays into how you manage content. You can create choice fields or a status column. You can, of course, have owners. You can create to track how much effort it might be to create or finish this content. So that value of how lists and files come together is they're really built on the same platform for how you track and manage information. In this respect, the information is a document. So what I want to show you is some of the value of when you're working with documents. You can easily make them more visible. So I'm going to show you one thing where I can pin this to the top. So this is the Contoso Loyalty Program PowerPoint. Now it appears at the top of the Files tab alongside two other pieces of content. The other thing that I can do is if I really want to more prominently display this for my team is I can take that PowerPoint and it doesn't move it, but I can make it as a tab of its own so that when I do that, it's going to now be up here and be a unique tab called Contoso Loyalty Program. And I think that's a little bit too long, so I can always rename it. I'm not renaming the file, I'm just renaming the tab. And I'll show you one of my favorite things is you can actually always go into Windows, and I like to use the handshake for the loyalty program. You can even use emojis so that you can make your tabs appear how you want them to from a naming perspective. But then the real value is that your document and how you work with other people is now working on the PowerPoint using PowerPoint for the web. And there's a lot of things you can do, of course, to manage and work on your slides and comment and share. There's a lot of things that you can do with your content. So let's look what it's like to actually start a conversation around a file. If I go in and I choose from recent, there's the loyalty program PowerPoint, and I'm going to share it as a link. What I really want to show you is when you're sharing it, by default, every member of the team has the same level of access, but you might be working with content that has different permissions than the team, or you want to adjust it for this particular share. You can go in and you can always just share with everybody as is. You can choose only this team. If ever anybody were to grab this link and share it with somebody else, it will only work for the freelance team, or you can more specifically choose. And really what I'm sharing here is when you go to share a piece of content, it is now the same. If you've used the sharing mechanism in OneDrive, in SharePoint, or now in Teams, you have the same sharing experience of course, here in Teams. And if I wanted to, just for this particular conversation, only allow people to click in to view the content but not edit it, in that instance when they open it, and here's what it looks like after I send it down. Now that the file's been shared in the thread, anybody that has access to it will be able to click into it, and similar how it was a tab in Teams, it's now also just a file that I can work at in its full fidelity, as large as possible, but I'm still inside Microsoft Teams. So that's a couple ways where it's easy to share an asset, and I'm going to go in and just show you a few more things of working with files in Teams from a column and metadata perspective. I showed you before with lists how I can go in and adjust based on grouping. This time I want to show you all things that are within a draft. So if I want to filter down by draft, I can apply that. And now it just minimizes down based on that metadata that's been listed as draft, just those 4 items that maybe need to call to my attention where I need to go work on them. And I know I'm working with Alan. I can go and learn a little bit more about Alan before I start to work with him, or I can jump right into the content and start working with it. Whether it's a Word document, an Excel spreadsheet, a PowerPoint, there's a lot of ways you can then use the metadata to help you transition through. And it even identifies some of the things that are missing. So if there's required information or you own building that in, we want to call that attention. Here you see it in the owner that the owner isn't listed, but I could also see that here amongst the whole list. And so that's a great way to see how metadata comes through so that you can work with your assets. I want to take off this filter and go back to the full list and show you one other thing that's the value. When you start to actually look across a lot of different content types, you'll see that we have previews, not only for what appears at the top, but you can actually scroll through and get a visual orientation around what this different content is. And you can see a lot of different content types. There's Adobe Illustrator files, there's image files, there's movie files, there's even 3-dimensional files, all of which we support 320 plus file types so that you can visually see all the content that you're working with. And again, if you're working it as a list, you can see that you've got some content pinned to the top and a real quick view to scroll through your content and start working with it. Another, of course, important area when you're working with files in Microsoft Teams or just working with your team is the ability to create new files. And you'll see that we have, similar to if you've used SharePoint in a document library, you really are doing the same thing here. I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a new Word document. And out of the box, you can see I can create a lot of different types of content. But to create, when I'm already in the team, I'm going to just give this a new assignment and then click Create. And it's going to automatically start to create both an instance of Word for Web to give me a great end user experience to create the content, but it's also now being stored in SharePoint. And I'll just do a quick hi, because this is just a simple demo to show you that if I close this out and I go back to my list of files and I go back to just my modified newer to older, you'll see here new assignment document now created by Megan, who I'm demoing by. And that's an easy way to create content that's already in the right place. My team members already have access to it. And if they come back, or I wanted to start to have a chat, to share it, to get their input, it's right here with my team, right? Being able to then co-author with me, to be able to share with other people. And of course, if I want to take this content with me, I can sync it, which is the last thing I want to show you, how to take all this content with you offline. This leverages OneDrive Sync to take your content offline so that you can work with it even when you don't have internet connectivity or you're just in a remote location that has a low latency connection. Choose the sync. It'll be able to give you access to all these files, and if there were subfolders, the subfolders as well. And now I can work at that offline, or anytime where I'm back online, all of my changes will sync back to the back end and be available here for other people. Even if they've also been working on that same file, they will all sync back and we'll have the latest information once we're reconnected. Hopefully you got a sense of how you work with files as a team. Let's start to wrap up and give you a little bit more other information where you can go to learn more about working with files and lists in Microsoft Teams. So just as much as you and your team members are better together when you work on projects and it's not a hassle or a hurdle to get over when you're managing items on a list, sharing a document, co-authoring, or asking somebody for their opinion on a specific piece of content, we are working hard to make sure that the experience is a better together experience, that working with a list doesn't feel like you're cutting over to a separate application, or opening up a file feels like you're opening up in some strange part of the browser that you're working in. It really is truly a better together experience when you start to work with other people on files and on lists and list data, that should feel like a cohesive experience. And there's a lot that we're doing to make that real, and we're always open to listening to what we could do better. So this is a great place when you start leveraging files and lists in Microsoft Teams. If you ever have a great idea, we would love to hear that. Really what I've shared today is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much that you can do in Microsoft Teams, and of course there's more that you can do to manage content for you, your team, or at scale across your whole organization. And that's true for lists. You can have lists as an individual, lists as a team, what I showed you, or lists that are broader for the whole company. The real intent here is that you have the capabilities not only to learn very quickly on how to manage content and information, but that there are a lot more resources and, of course, people that are here to help. We have a resource center for lists. If you go to aka.ms/mslists, it'll take you to a lot of videos, case studies, deeper documentation to learn how to do more things than what I showed you today. We have a new blog that announces a lot of the things that are coming next for Microsoft Lists. You can go to the Lists Ignite blog. There's a way to learn more, of course, on how to collaborate on files in Microsoft Teams. This is a great help article that I created a short link to, aka.ms/Microsoft365/files/teams. The last two is, if you want to keep up to date with what we're doing next, you can always go to the public Microsoft 365 roadmap. Great way to filter down on the products and the different things that you want to learn about what's coming next. You can filter down on SharePoint, you can filter down on Teams, and there's a lot of new items now for Microsoft Lists. The last thing I want to promote is we like to keep the conversation not just as Ignite one time you hear from us, but I manage a podcast called The Interzone, where we talk with experts both inside and outside of Microsoft, and we talk a breadth about all the intranet capabilities of Microsoft Teams, of SharePoint, of OneDrive, of Yammer, of Stream. And if you've got a topic you want to promote that you want to hear us discuss at a point in time throughout the year, the Interzone is a great place. We want to hear your feedback. Just go to aka.ms/theinterzone and subscribe today. Thank you for your time. I hope you learned a little bit about files and lists in Teams, and we can't wait to hear about what you liked and what you think about what we should do in the future.